The fear pitch behind the open weights fight. Something shifted in Silicon Valley's China debate this week, and it wasn't subtle. Jensen Huang, who had never posted on X before, used his first post to back a letter telling Washington not to restrict open-weight AI models. Within days, the list of signatories went from 25 to 77. Microsoft, Meta, Google, OpenAI, IBM, Hugging Face, Mistral, Mozilla, the Linux Foundation. One name was conspicuously missing: Anthropic. That absence is the story, and it's worth asking why. The pattern before the policy. Anthropic's public voice for the past year has been Dario Amodei, and Amodei has been busy. In May 2025, he told Axios that AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs within 5 years and push unemployment as high as 20%. In January 2026, he followed that with a 20,000-word essay warning that AI systems smarter than Nobel laureates could arrive by 2027. That autonomous models have already shown signs of deceiving their own creators in testing, and that AI-enabled dictatorship is a live possibility. None of this is illegitimate to say out loud, but it's also a company whose CEO has a habit of pairing existential warnings with commercial timing, and outside observers have noticed. Fortune's AI editor described the January essay as reading like a novella-length marketing message as much as a warning. A Cisco Field CTO put it more bluntly to a reporter last year: AI companies have to say extreme things to gain attention and instill FOMO. Whatever you think of the underlying risk, the rhetorical move is consistent. Danger first, business model second, and the two arrive in the same paragraph often enough that critics stopped believing they're unrelated. Then Kimi K3 landed. The immediate trigger for the open-weights fight was Moonshot AI's Kimi K3, a Chinese open-weight model that matched or beat American frontier systems on several benchmarks at a fraction of the training cost. That's the moment the conversation in Washington turned from abstract AI safety to a very concrete question: should the US restrict access to Chinese open models? Anthropic's answer arrived in a blog post from Amodei on July 27, and it's worth reading closely because it doesn't ask for a ban. It asks for 3 things: tighter chip export controls to China, a crackdown on what Amodei calls industrial-scale distillation, and mandatory safety testing for every sufficiently capable model, open or closed. Distillation, in this telling, is the mechanism by which Chinese labs supposedly cheat, training smaller models on the outputs of larger ones instead of building from scratch. Here's where the argument gets shaky. Every frontier lab, Anthropic included, built its own models by scraping the open internet at a scale no individual creator consented to. Anthropic itself agreed to a $1.5 billion settlement just weeks earlier over training Claude on pirated books. Complaining that a Chinese lab learned from your model's outputs, after your own model learned from the entire unpaid internet, is a strange place to plant a flag about intellectual honesty. Distillation is a real technique with real implications for the pace of the race. It just isn't the clean moral story it's being sold as. Who called it what it looked like? David Sachs, the former White House AI advisor, said the quiet part out loud. Leading closed-model labs, in his framing, want the government to eliminate their open-source competition. He wasn't naming Anthropic directly at first, but when the company sat out the NVIDIA letter, while OpenAI and Google eventually signed on, the inference wrote itself. Harry Godfrey of the Little Tech Association, representing roughly 200 startups that build on open models, warned that a ban would be an existential threat to companies that have nothing to do with China at all. That's the part that matters beyond the Anthropic versus everyone else drama. A policy sold as protecting national security from a specific foreign threat, once written into law, doesn't stay narrow. Restrictions built around distillation and dangerous open weights can just as easily catch Llama, Mistral, or any startup running a fine-tuned open model in production. The companies that sell compute and infrastructure regardless of which model wins, NVIDIA, Dell, IBM, AMD have every incentive to want that ecosystem to stay open. The companies that sell access to a proprietary model have the opposite incentive. Neither side is arguing from nowhere, but only one side dressed its incentive in the language of existential risk. The safety framing doesn't survive contact with the facts. Amodei has now said, more than once, that Anthropic never called for banning open-weight models, and that open models without dangerous capabilities are a public good. Taken at face value, that's a moderate position. But look at what he's actually asking for instead of a ban. Tighter chip controls aimed specifically at China, a crackdown on distillation aimed specifically at the labs producing the strongest open-weight competitors, and safety testing that, in practice, raises costs and slows down exactly the kind of low-budget, fast-moving open release that Kimi K3 represented. You don't need a ban to get the effect of one. You just need friction, applied selectively enough. That's the textbook shape of regulatory capture, not outlaw the competitor, which is clumsy and draws exactly the backlash Anthropic got this week.